I live in a small town in Kansas. The town itself is nothing special with about 4,000 residents total. However, it's very close to two major cities, and those can attract some unwanted crowds from time to time. Anyway, it was a boring Saturday night for me. I was sitting in my room around 8 o'clock playing video games and eating as much junk food as I could possibly find around my house. Luckily, my girlfriend, we'll call her Chloe, texted me to tell me that her parents would be gone for the night, and she had the whole house all to herself. I was 17 at the time, and didn't have my own car, yet this was too good of an opportunity to let pass by, so I jumped on my bike and rode about 2 miles across town to her house. For the first 30 minutes or so, everything was good. We talked for a while out in her living room, but things began to pick up heat, and we decided to move into her bedroom, given that the whole house was ours and nobody would be able to object. It was just starting to get dark at this point, so there was no need to turn on any lights. So we were in her room having a good time, when all of a sudden there was a ridiculously loud bang on her front door. This wasn't just someone knocking. Imagine if someone balled up their fist and punched the door as hard as they could. It was that loud, given the fact that neither of us were fully clothed at this point, and it was almost 10 o'clock. We just kinda sat there silently listening for footsteps walking away, but we didn't hear anything like that. I knew if the mood had any chance of going back to what it was, I would have to make sure whoever it was gone. So I threw my shirt back on and walked into the dark living room and up to the front door. I looked out and saw that there was no one outside the window. However, I got that feeling that something wasn't quite right. I didn't know what it was exactly, but I let my eyes scan the room until I noticed that her back door was wide open, and a couple of steps past it, right by the kitchen cabinets, was the crouching silhouette of a man. My heart stopped when I saw this. I didn't want whoever this was to know that I saw them, so I slowly made my way back to Chloe's room, keeping my eye on the intruder the entire time. I finally got back into the room and shut and locked her door. That's when I started freaking out. I told Chloe to call the police and that someone was in her house. I started pushing her dresser and everything else I could in front of the door to reinforce it. After I felt that I had sufficiently blocked the door, I joined Chloe on the bed while she talked to the 911 operator. That's when the door began to shake violently, and the man began screaming like a maniac on the other side. I threw myself against the barricade I made, hoping that I would help reinforce it to hold the intruder back long enough for the police to arrive. After almost 5 horrifying minutes, I could hear and feel the door giving way to the man's force. That's when I finally saw from the bedroom window the rays of blue and red lights. The man obviously noticed the sirens from outside because he stopped ramming into the door and began running towards the exit of the house. I heard the police enter the house and began screaming at the man to get down. Once all the commotion had settled down, there was a knock at the door, and a female cop told us that it was safe to come out. We walked out of the room, never letting go of each other, and we were guided outside to wait. When they walked the intruder out, he looked at us with so much malice and hatred, it still gives me chills to this day. It turned out the man had gotten extremely drunk. His wife had threw him out of the house for the night. In his drunken rage, he decided to break into and terrorize a random house. The wife came after about 10 minutes and hugged both of us and apologized for her husband's actions. Chloe's parents arrived shortly after, and they both hugged us as well. They weren't mad at me for being over, probably because if I hadn't been there, who knows what would have happened to Chloe. Overall, there wasn't much damage to the house, just a lot of fear and terrifying memories that will stick with us forever. About 12 years ago, I had a friend who was from a broken home and seemed to always be getting into trouble. I made it a point to hang out with him on Saturdays and go downtown and eat and pretty much do whatever. That night, my friend made the suggestion that we go eat at the Hooters they had just opened up. After eating some delicious wings, we went to go see a movie. After the movie got out, we stuck around for a while, walking and talking and basically just having a good time. At this point, it was getting pretty late, So that's when we decided to head back. As we were driving, he told me to take this dirt road that will lead behind his grandparents' house, where he was staying at the time. From the dirt road, it would just be a short walk up a hill. Also, it would cut about 10 minutes off of our time. As soon as the road came up, I turned. It was a dirt road on the side of the Oklahoma River, and it ran for miles. We drove about 2 miles in, and found that one of the small bridges to be washed out. It had rained a bit the night before, but the road was fine up until that point. I tried to turn around, and of course, we got stuck. For the next 30 minutes, we tried to get my car out of the mud, but to no avail. There was no cell phone reception in this area, and I told my friend that I would have to walk all the way back to the main road so I could call my dad to come pick us up. My friend and I were already a little freaked out because of the area. That's when my friend said, "I'm going to take this tire iron with me for protection." I called him a wuss, but I understood, so I obliged him. We started down the road. When about halfway up, an old-fashioned yellow pickup truck seemed to emerge from the shadows and was making its way towards us. Once we came within the rays of the headlights, the truck stopped. I told my friend, well, maybe he can help us get the car out of the mud. He seemed to agree, and we began walking towards the truck. But as we started that way, the truck revved its engine. It kind of caught us off guard, and we jumped back. It was at this point that I turned to my friend and told him that I had a very bad feeling about this. It was at this time we heard the truck rev up again and was now speeding towards us very fast. We both jumped into the tree line just in time. After the truck sped past, we got back up and peeked our heads out, but we saw nothing. We thought that he took a turn down one of the other roads that led to the river, so after a few moments, we headed back towards the main road, albeit on high alert. As soon as we got back on the dirt road, something caught our attention. Behind us was the silhouette of the truck. It had its headlights off, and as soon as we noticed it, the truck started speeding towards us again. He flipped on his headlights and charged towards us. I pushed my friend into a briar bush. Then I jumped in as well, narrowly escaping the psycho in the truck once again. This time, we decided to go through the woods towards the river. We could hear the truck's engine idling, and as we made our way through the woods, we saw it slowly driving where we had jumped into the bushes. There was a spotlight shining into the forest, like the ones on the sides of police cars. We came out on the other side of the river. My friend was freaking out at this point, saying, "I don't want to die, man. What is this guy doing?" I responded, "Maybe he's growing some weed down here. Maybe he's thinking that we're trying to steal it or something." We thought we were in the clear, when all of a sudden the truck emerges from a side road and drives up to the riverbank. From where we were, I don't think the driver saw us, but that didn't stop us from running back into the woods as fast as we could. The truck drove back up the road and vanished. We walked for a little while longer, then we ended up calling my dad to come pick us up. When he arrived, we told him what happened, and he asked us why didn't we call the police. I guess I was so freaked out and so dead set on calling my dad, it just didn't occur to me. Sometimes your mind just doesn't think logically when you're under distress. We ended up not calling the cops since we didn't see a tag on the truck or the person behind the wheel. That wasn't the best decision looking back on it, because who else would be driving an old-fashioned yellow truck? The next day, my dad and a friend of his who owned a tow truck pulled my car out of the mud. Thankfully, there was no damage to my car. To this day, a cold chill runs up my spine every time I drive by that road. It was a Tuesday night around 11 p.m. in 2002. I was walking down a dimly lit street at night on my way back home from work. My car had been in the shop, so I was forced to walk the 3 miles home every night. The walk was barely an hour, so I would usually be home before midnight. I live in a small town in southern Indiana, so after 10 there's rarely any cars on the road. The only vehicles you ever see are the truckers heading to Indianapolis. I was about a mile into the walk when I turned down a dirt road. My house was off the beaten path, so I had to take these dirt roads surrounded by forest to get there. As I was turning, I heard the sound of a motor in the distance, and it was drawing closer. I saw about a quarter mile down the stretch of road I had just turned off of, a van moving very slowly, without its headlights on. At first, this didn't strike me as out of place, due to the fact that the town that I live in, there's a pretty cheap car dealership that sells used cars and vans with broken parts, so I just assumed that this person was one of their clients. I kept walking down the side road, with the van still slowly making its way down the main road. About 5 seconds later, I jumped when I heard the sound of the van's engine roar. It then sped up really fast, and now had its headlights on. The van got about 500 feet away from the side road entrance, before killing its headlights again. I was now officially creeped out, but I didn't want to seem startled, so I just walked faster down the road. I kept turning back constantly to see if I was being followed. Then my suspicions became reality, as I saw the van turn onto the dirt road. When I saw this, I started walking faster. I didn't want to turn back, but I did, just to be safe. What I saw frightened every bone in my body. I saw the van come to a stop. Both the passenger and driver's side doors opened. At this point, I ran for my life down the dirt road. As I did, I heard a gunshot ring out not far away. And for a split second, I thought I was going to die. I made a quick turn into a nearby tree line and hid behind a giant rock. A short while later, I heard what sounded like the voice of a middle-aged man say, "I think they're hiding somewhere in the woods." What sounded like the voice of a young woman responded, "Okay, sir, we'll see if we can find her." I peeked my head out from behind my hiding spot and saw the silhouettes of what looked like 3 young women conversing with a man. I was worried that this was some sort of sick cult looking for their next blood sacrifice. I covered my mouth, trying not to make any sounds, when I heard the man say, "Whoever finds her first doesn't have to drink her blood tonight." I spent what felt like an eternity sitting behind that rock, jumping at any sound that I heard. Then to my relief, I heard the sound of police sirens nearby. I saw the red and blue lights just outside the forest. I waited for a few more minutes, and then I suddenly made a break for it. I ran out of the forest screaming for my life, and directly into the arms of a police officer. When they finally calmed me down, they asked me if I knew anything about this body. I was confused, but when I looked down, I saw that in front of the cop car was the body of a bloodied, naked young woman. After screaming at the top of my lungs and having to be calmed down again, I explained everything that happened to me that night. They were nice enough to give me a lift back home after I spoke to a detective. Naturally, with this being a homicide, I would have to keep in touch. I had a hard time getting to sleep when I got home. It was now the early hours of the morning. I got up and looked out my bedroom window, and to my absolute horror, I saw the same van driving slowly down my street with no headlights on. This time, I was smart enough to write down its license plate number when it came under the rays of a nearby streetlight. I called the cops immediately and told them what I saw, and gave them the license plate number along with a more accurate description of the vehicle. As expected, when the cops came, the van was gone, but what they told me next still haunts me to this day. We checked the license plate number. It's registered in South Dakota. We checked around with other departments in the surrounding counties, and they've all had reports tonight that there was a suspicious van with that license plate number. And with the timing of these reports, we think that there's more than one van. We'll call you if we have any more information. It has been well over a decade since that night, and I never got a call with any kind of follow-up. My best guess is that it was some sort of cult that was using fake license plates to avoid being identified, but I'll never know for sure.
There's always a reason.